All righty. I'm here with Mackenzie Grate. She is a real estate agent in Ulster County, New York. She was an investor, but now she's got her license. She's done New Agent 365. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Let's get started in the beginning. What got you into investing in real estate and when did you do that?
Yeah, so I actually am an assistant principal by day. And, part of being in education, one of the trade-offs, as rewarding as it can be, is there's not a lot of pay. So my initial plan was to start investing. And I actually am down here in New York City during the week doing education. So it was definitely hard to invest down here. So I decided to start looking for different markets that were close by to start to build my portfolio so that it was easier to buy into. And about 4 years ago, I found Ulster County, specifically the town of Kingston. And I actually had never been there before. I didn't own a car because us city folks did not have cars back then. I had a friend who had a car and I asked him, I was like, hey, would you mind driving me up there just to look at some properties? And sure enough, that very first day, I ended up putting in an offer. This, of course, was way back before the market was crazy. So the offer got accepted. And that was kind of my start into the real estate world, so to speak.
So you were saying, being working for the school is not a lot of money. My wife's a teacher. I get that. So how did you get that first property? Did you put big money down or was it?
Yeah, so I was able to buy it with only 10% down. And it was, a class C rental property in a working class neighborhood. So it wasn't a lot out of pocket. My goal with my first purchase was to make sure that if they didn't pay rent, I could cover it out of my own pocket. Because that was, as a new investor, that's your biggest fear is like what happens when they don't pay rent. So yeah, it was pretty easy. It was 10% down. We were able to lock it up. I was able to find a property manager pretty quickly, get it rented out. And I've held on to it ever since. It's still in my portfolio. There definitely were some learning curves as with any new property as an investor. But I wouldn't trade it for the world because these are all the stories that I'm able to then share with my clients now, because most of my clients are investors and are doing a similar thing to what I'm trying to do. So I definitely have a lot of stories that I can share with them, good and bad.
What are the maybe quickly top 2 or 3 things that a new investor should really consider?
I definitely think you have to be realistic about management. A lot of people say, oh, I want to manage the property myself because I want to learn about the house. But, management can make or break you. It is important to learn about the house, but I really think it's one of those things that I'm grateful I've found a great property manager because they help improve my investment over time. Not only do I have less turnover and higher quality tenants, but it also just relieves my stress and frees up my time so that I can focus on finding other properties. So I would say definitely that. The numbers have to work from the beginning. And I get it, especially in this market right now. It's like one of those things where sometimes we get anxious and we're like, I just want to get another property right now. And you're willing to compromise a little bit. Some people are like, oh, well, down the line, if it appreciates, great. I don't bet on that. Like that to me is the icing on the cupcake, but it's gotta pay for itself and then some a little bit from the very start. And there has to be a solid plan in place to improve the value over time. And then the other thing I would just say is being very aware of the market that you're buying into. So the reason why I bought in a town that I had never been to before was because it had all of the factors that showed that there were more people growing and moving into the area. So I actually Googled the 3 fastest growing job markets in New York State, and 2 of them were way over by the Great Lakes. And then the third one was closer. And I was like, okay, this is perfect. This is within travel distance, so I could get to it if it's an emergency. And it actually turns out that I don't know if this was luck or really solid research, but Kingston, especially back during the pandemic, was one of the strongest appreciating markets across the country. A lot of people were moving there and still are. So there was a lot of growth after I purchased there, which was exciting.
Nice. How many properties do you have right now?
Yeah, so I have 5 properties. Altogether, it's 8 long-term rental doors and I'm doing my first Airbnb. So that should be available soon if anyone wants to rent it out.
And that's in Ulster County as well, Kingston?
That is, it's not in Kingston. It's in
Oh.
a little town called Stone Ridge, which is about 20 minutes south of Kingston. That's the first property I've bought kind of in the surrounding areas. But it's a short drive to Kingston too, if you want to go enjoy all of the fun stuff to do there.
And why did you choose Airbnb over a pure rental on this one?
So it's funny, I actually had zero desire to get into Airbnb. I know it's trendy. I know we hear about the cash flow. For me, it really was, I needed a place to stay myself when I'm up there. So I do all my sales up there. I work on my properties. And what I've done thus far, and I probably will do it again, is as I have a project, I will drag my air mattress there and I will camp out in my campsite. And then during the days, I will go out and do my showings and help my clients. So yeah, this past year, it's definitely been a great year of growth. But at a certain point, I was like, all right, it would be very nice if I could bring my husband and my pugs up. And I don't think that would do too well in a construction site. So I figured this would be a nice blend. Some weekends that they come up, we'll use it for our own. And then the rest of the time I will learn about Airbnb so that I can also better help my clients, because a lot of them are interested in buying Airbnb. So it helps to have that experience firsthand to kind of guide them and again, share stories of what has worked so far and what hasn't.
Have you heard of any of the pushback on Airbnb by municipalities and things? And what are you hearing up in your area?
Definitely. I mean, they're clamping down really hard because there is such a shortage of long-term rentals. So a lot of towns are passing good cause eviction laws. Kingston has passed that recently. And essentially that law just says, you can't end if someone wants to renew the lease, they're able to, unless they either don't pay rent or, it's an unsafe environment. There's like very few things that would prevent them from renewing the lease. And there's also, they just incorporated a 5% cap on raising rent. So a lot of the towns right now are either outlawing Airbnb entirely or restricting it to you have to live on the property. So yeah, that is one thing that I have to be very careful of when I'm working with my clients, and like let them know here's the areas with very clear laws that have been set for a while and established. And then here are the areas where they're talking about certain stuff. It doesn't mean it's going to pass, but there's probably a good chance. And then here's kind of the wild, wild west. We don't know what's going to happen. Haven't heard a thing, but it's possible that something could be coming down the pike for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the property manager real quick. That is a hard one to find. How much, if you're willing to tell me, how much does it cost you to have a property manager for your properties?
Yeah. So for this property manager that I have now, they charge 7%. And then they do a tenanting fee, which is a half a month's rent. So anytime that you need to re-tenant it. They are key. So before, with my first purchase, I was able to find a property manager straight away. And, he rented it out. He even knew the guy from another property that he had managed. So all was well until it wasn't, like 2 years in. And then there was like some sort of domestic dispute. So they were breaking up. And essentially what ended up happening is they both moved out and left all of the stuff in the apartment. Every last bit. So with my property manager at the time, he was kind of like a one-man show, great guy, but he was doing it all himself and he had other properties. So that's kind of when I learned the hard lesson about just having one person as your property manager, because when it comes to turnover time, and if there is something that needs like a little bit of extra work, it's probably going to take a little bit longer to turn it over. And that's what ended up happening in my situation. And then of course there was, looking back, I don't think he was like checking in on the property enough. So there was some other damage that, could have been preventable. So that's kind of why I reached out to several property managers afterwards in the area, interviewed a whole bunch. And the one I ended up going with is Integrity Property Management out of Poughkeepsie. And what I really liked was the owner was like, straight up. We had our first phone conversation, probably lasted an hour. And I just kind of picked his brain, and he wasn't just giving me all of the answers you want to hear. Cause that's always a sign too of like, okay, wait a minute, this sounds too good to be true. Like he was definitely straight up like, here's the situation, here's the laws here, here's what you're going to have to do. So I ended up going with them out of all of the ones that I was interviewing, and it's definitely worked out pretty well. I recommend them to my clients, but I also have others that I recommend. But I think the thing people have to keep in mind too when you hire a property manager is it's still not a set it and forget it. Like, yes, you are hiring them to manage your properties, but you still have to manage the manager. You still have to be like in touch with them. You have to communicate with them how you want to be communicated with. Like, if you want to know every little detail about your property, then you have to tell them that. They're not going to read your mind. They're going to assume that you're looking at the reports. They're going to assume that if there's questions that pop up, you'll reach out. And so if you're someone who's like, I need to know what's going on with these tenants, please tell me every time anything changes, then you have to kind of have that conversation so that they know what your style is in order for it to really work.
I helped a client buy a house a few years ago, and it had been a rental for 10 years. The owners lived in Alaska. They had never seen the property, and they did not know what disrepair that house was in. So when they got our repair request, they were livid with their property management team because they had no idea that there were so many issues, and they were obvious exterior ones too. It wasn't,
Right.
it was terrible. So I've seen some good and some bad ones. I know someone who's got like 350 doors, and he talks about the struggle of getting good property managers. And you're delegating, but you still inspect what you expect, I think is the phrase.
And just because they start out good doesn't mean that things might not
Right.
change. New management comes in, new employees come in. So it's like one of those things that you kind of have to stay on top of and see if it's still working for you. And if it's not at that point, have the conversation about what's not working. And then if that doesn't change, then definitely be brave enough to look elsewhere. Because I've also seen people who will be so afraid to fire a property manager. They're like, oh, but they're so nice and I know their family. And it's like, yes, but this is also your property. This is your investment. You are putting your assets on the line. So it's okay to, if someone's not meeting the bar, to give them a chance, but also to walk away if it's not working.
Yeah. It's important. It's remembering it's a business,
Mm-hmm.
because if
Mm-hmm.
not, you're going to give away all of your profit and there's a lot of risk.
Totally.
Did, did you, speaking of risk with the eviction moratorium, did you get hurt by that? Did you have some scary moments?
So I wouldn't say scary moments. So I ended up buying a duplex with a partner last June, and I had bought a fourplex before that, and we had inherited tenants, and all had gone well. I had met them, so I wasn't too nervous about inheriting tenants, but we did ask for it to be delivered tenant free. And then about a week before closing, they said that they were unable to get the tenants upstairs out. So they were going to lower the price by 5,000, and we wanted to see proof that they were paying and all of that. And of course, naive looking back, as soon as we closed, they stopped paying. So luckily the downstairs was still vacant. We were able to renovate that and rent that out. But the upstairs hasn't been paying since then. And the moratorium ended here in January. So now we're just starting the New York eviction process, which is also pretty lengthy compared to other states. So I wouldn't say it was terrible. Like, it was definitely a lesson learned. Fortunately for us, the downstairs tenant was able to pay for most of the mortgage, so it wasn't too hard of a hit. But it was definitely a lesson in being very mindful when you inherit tenants. Like, because it had gone so well before, I just assumed that it would go so well again, which, didn't necessarily happen. But other than that, all of my tenants were really great. They all paid. It seemed to me like, the lesson is always, again, if you screen your tenants right and you treat them well and you're responsive as a landlord, that usually they'll reciprocate.
Yeah. I've got some friends that have rentals. One, he had to sell his house just because his person was not doing the rent. That's the only way to get them out. But for most cases, it was, well, the numbers I was seeing nationwide was that it was pretty similar to what it had been before with people not paying. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you only have a few rentals, that domino can start to fall, and that gets a little scary. So
Definitely, definitely. And I guess the disappointing part too is there was a lot of support for tenants who weren't paying in terms of like programs, but there wasn't really a lot of support for landlords.
right.
And a couple of programs are popping up now, but even now, for those who didn't have a solid, like emergency fund, like it might be a little too late for some of them. So it's rough. I guess that's the other lesson too that I've always kind of known, but this reassured is like, make sure that you do have that emergency fund set aside and that you have some sort of plan, because you can get through anything as long as you can hold on to the property. It'll make it in the end, but you just don't
Right.
want to lose it along the way.
So you were investing and then you're like, I should be a real estate agent. So when did that light bulb go off?
Yeah. So, I mean, during the pandemic, like everyone else, we had a lot of free time on our hands. And, when you get antsy and I'm like, oh, I just love real estate. I'm ready to buy my next property. And then it just kind of hit me like, maybe I should, like everyone else. They think it's so easy. I get it. I made the same mistake. Oh, I could probably just get my real estate license and then I can save a little bit of money on my own purchases. I mean, how hard can it be? Right. So I studied for the test, took the test, and then January last year, I officially became licensed. And then I definitely was like, oh, let me really try this. Now I was getting more excited studying about it. I was like, let me really try this and just see. And worst case scenario, I'll sell 3 houses this year. That will be my goal, 3 houses. And lo and behold, it was a lot more that I ended up selling. I ended up really enjoying working with clients. And I think also because a lot of them are like me, younger investors who are excited and looking to get started in that regard. But it was just a choice that kind of happened during the pandemic. I'm so glad it did because I feel like I've become a better investor as a result of it. And I'm able to help more people. And I don't know, it's just been really, really fulfilling to see other people getting their investment properties and taking control of their life and like getting that hope. You know what I mean? Like in a world that was pretty hopeless the past couple of years, seeing people kind of taking ownership over their own well-being and their family and their future finances. And yeah, that's been super rewarding.
So you started during the pandemic. You you had investments. You're assistant principal.
Yep.
Your goal was 3. How many homes did you close in a year?
I think like with rentals included, I think I did like 25 deals the first year. Yeah.
So rental, just putting people in homes.
Yeah. So like I would have investors who would buy certain properties and then they would ask me to rent them out.
Okay.
So I had a couple of those where it was like there was a 3-plex and I rented all 3 of those units. I had someone who was doing a renovation for an Airbnb and then we were able to rent that out for her. She didn't end up putting it on Airbnb. She ended up renting it through me and we found some great tenants. Guest tenants. It was kind of a mix. But yeah, so like all together between buying and selling and listing, I would say 25 deals the first year. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting.
So what surprised you? You thought it was easy. I can tell by your laugh. You found out what was hard. So what are some of those discrepancies? I mean, you had some experience,
Yeah.
with this. What was the biggest surprises?
Yeah, I think for me is like as an assistant principal, a lot of my day is mediations, between students, between teachers, between parents. It's a lot of difficult conversations. And I don't know why I seem to think that wouldn't carry over into real estate. That was naive. Because what I'm realizing now is real estate is constantly negotiating critical conversations, as we call them. And, like trying to help people, but also be realistic, especially in this market. And to keep them going and keep them motivated, but also to kind of like, if you're a buyer and you're coming in with a lot less cash, you gotta kind of figure out how you're gonna do this. It doesn't mean you can lowball them and it's gonna happen. So I think that was the main thing, is just kind of realizing how much back and forth that there is between, and I'm not just even talking about clients, also like working with other real estate agents, because a lot of people are new too, so you could be dealing with someone who's been in the business for 10 years and they think because they've been in the business for 10 years they're going to run the deal how they're going to run it. Or you could be dealing with someone who's like brand new like me in the beginning, where it was just like, oh, this was really nice, yes, let's work together. And so you just get the whole gamut of personalities and managing them and expectations and still working towards the same goal in a transaction. I think that is the beautiful thing. Yeah. Is in theory, everyone is working towards the same goal. So when that's happening, then you're able to find solutions for challenging stuff that pops up. And that's the other thing too. I always thought, okay, well, after these first few, there will be a smooth transaction. Like it's coming. Okay. I'm learning now with these. And then by transaction 4, 5, 6, 7, 20, you're like, there is no such thing as a smooth transaction. There is.
It's coming. This is not the market for a smooth transaction, unfortunately.
Okay, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just in this crazy market that it's not there yet. But it's like every time there's a curveball and something you learn and you're like, all right, we're going to figure this out. There's got to be a solution.
And that exactly is the attitude you have to have. And that's where I think a lot of agents really trip up and get defeated, is constantly having a problem. And like, I can't get past this. Buyers think that they're the only ones who ever find mold in a house or a broken sewer line, or, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And so when we can tell them, dealt with this before and it's not a problem. So with the agents, I will find a way. I will find the person who can give me the answer. I will push for the answer. You may not get what you want, right, but at least I'm going to get the answer and I will find it somewhere, somehow. And that resiliency comes down to resiliency. I think the two things that agents need is resiliency and consistency. If you get those two, you can probably make it.
Yeah. Because
almost all these people are good, but they get defeated. They get sidetracked, they get whatever. It's tough.
It's interesting you say that too, because I've thought a lot about this, doing it on the side. I hate even saying that, on the side, because I feel like it's been a full-time job too. It's almost made it a little bit less stressful in a sense, because I don't go into it looking at it like it's a sale and like I need the money. I've got the steady W-2 job right now. But that being said, I feel like it's kind of given me the opportunity to really enjoy the process of working with each client. Like, it's not about whether it closes or not. Obviously I want it to close, and especially for my clients, but it's not like I have to make a sale this weekend or else I will not eat. That I think also is kind of one of the challenges if someone is doing it purely on their own, is it can be scary and it can add extra pressure to situations that are already pretty stressful sometimes, so it's people who are really good at managing stress too, I think, do a great job as a realtor.
I think letting go, and what you're talking about is also the thing that happens to agents when they have a few deals going at the same time, is losing that pressure of a deal closing. You are at your best when you're not under pressure. Yeah. And when and it's very hard. Our whole point is to make a living doing this. Yeah. But if you can let go of the outcome, you're going to be better with your responses, with your just whatever you do.
Right.
Of course, we have this, and you took New Agent 365. My thing about small wins, tracking the small wins, because it's easier to you can let go of some of those big things. They're not going to hurt you as bad. So I'm jumping all over the place, but that thing is just letting go of the outcome. What's going to happen is going to happen. Do your best. Don't sweat it. And I see that is the main challenge of agents in a deal. I can't let this go. I need this deal, or I can't let these people down, or whatever. You're going to do better when you're not stressed.
Totally. And what you said, being consistent, just tracking those things that you have to do over and over and focusing on that, right? Don't worry about what's going to happen at the end. It'll pay for itself somehow down the line. But if you're just showing up every day, then I think the rest will follow.
Yeah. So you took New Agent 365. It's a class that I'm one of the 12 instructors. Yeah. And what did you take away from that in your real estate career? Or
Yeah.
tell me all the good things about the class, not mine, but all the
Definitely.
good things you got from New Agent 365.
So I actually really sought out the program because I really wanted to go with a broker after interviewing several brokers. I ended up going with a very small boutique brokerage because I really connected with the broker herself. She specializes in investment. I just felt like I would get more of that one-on-one support. But I also recognized that there wasn't going to be like the same foundational training that like Keller Williams would provide or Coldwell Banker would provide. So that's why I sought out New Agent 365, because I felt like that would give me the foundation that I needed, while at the same time still working in a smaller boutique brokerage that specialized in the area that I really am excited about. Um, so it helped me tremendously. Like I had no idea what a CRM was before. I'll own it. I had no idea. And when we got the assignment that week to go enter everything, and I was like, oh my God, this is like a lot, you know? And then it just, I guess what it did is it helped form solid habits that you need to do as an agent consistently, like you said earlier, so that everything else follows. And without that program, I probably wouldn't have known what all of those habits are. You know, I might have found them along the way, but it was put together in a very succinct, cohesive way where it was like, okay, here's step one, here's step two. And it explained pretty much every aspect of the business, including ones that I didn't even think about. So that's why I joined it. And I found it to be very helpful. Also, I love a good deadline, you know. So one
Yeah.
of the things about the program is you had to finish the assignment and watch the video before Friday, because on Friday it was taken away. And what I loved about that, it was like, all right, well, you know, I definitely don't want to miss a video, so you have to make time for it, you know, or else it's going to go missing. So that helped me, I think, to really also accelerate the learning curve as well.
Yeah, Shelly's done a really good job. I think I'm a deadline person. That's my best accountability tool. So I'm glad she has that in there.
Totally. And I loved how she was like, I'm not kidding. And then she wasn't. She was
She
taken
was not.
away.
Well, you're a year in. What are you expecting? What's your 5-year kind of plan here?
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely want to continue to do sales. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy working with people. I also want to continue growing my portfolio so that when I do transition out of my daytime job, that again, I don't feel that stress of like the pressure of having to close a commission. I want to have multiple streams of income so that I can really take my time and continue to work with clients, and not feel pressured, and really kind of bring my best self to the work. Because part of my transitioning from education, as awesome as it was, and it taught me a lot, was after 15 years, you know, I'm tired. I got to be honest. And I need something that is going to re-spark that excitement. And I found it in real estate. I found it in working with my clients. So I want to make sure that I bring that joy into the work and don't lose that. I think that to me is the most important thing, is like, I enjoy shopping with my clients. I enjoy walking through a house with them and us talking through ideas. You know, I enjoy getting those texts where they're like, oh my God, I just got my couch, and they send me a picture of it all cutesied up. And I'm like, that is fabulous, you know? Or when they're like, oh, Mackenzie, did you know this could happen? I was like, I did not. Or yes, I did. That actually happened to mine. Here's what you do. You know, like I really enjoy the whole process, but also like the relationship that forms after too. Because for me, it's not just about the closing date. Yes, that's fun, that's exciting, but it's also about like, these are going to be my neighbors, or these are going to be people who live in the community, and you know, they're friends, you know.
That's awesome. I think you're going to kill it. I think you're going to do a fantastic job. You have the energy, you have the drive.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate it.
what questions do you have for me? I often ask that for the
Yeah,
newer agents.
yeah. So, well, actually, I was going to ask you a different question, but talking about the seller's market and the stress, what do you kind of foresee for like newer agents who are starting off now? Do you think it's going to continue to be as challenging for the next few years? Do you think that's going to kind of change when the market changes? Do you feel like this is going to burn out a lot of newer agents?
Um, I'm having trouble seeing how it can sustain for more than another couple of years because of the affordability.
Mm,
Really, what changed everything was interest rates got so low. There's a chart I've done a few times. I've posted on Instagram, which just shows the buying power that in 2016, in 2020, if you adjust for inflation, it was cheaper to buy these more expensive homes than it was in 1980, where interest rates were 16%.
yeah.
But we're going to go from having interest rates at 2.75 up to probably back up to 5% at some point. And it's just, unless wages grow, it's not going to happen. And I think a lot of the wage growth is not going to happen at that lower tier. I mean, minimum wage has been at $7 for so long for federally. Oregon's
Yeah.
higher, some states are, but if that's not going to keep up, I'm not sure how it's going to happen. But I also know that there was not a glut, but they just didn't build for a few years. And we are so far behind. Now, the other thing is that we've got more investors, more people
Yes.
like you that are investing, because the one thing about social media is it's spreading the word of how you can do it. And you can find out anything on YouTube. And everyone on TikTok's been talking about investing. So when you have, and this is the problem with Airbnb, unfortunately, is you can pay twice as much as you would as a homeowner because you know you're going to get so much more out of that rent.
Right.
And so a lot of these touristy places are just going to have trouble, and they're going to have to stop the Airbnbs, I think. Otherwise, they're not going to have the workers there. They're not going to have community there. So I think there's going to be a huge change on Airbnb at some point. I'm just not sure when.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough homes. But there has to be a ceiling. There's just what people can afford. Not everything can hit $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to hit a plateau, and it's just going to be the plateau for whichever locality, what people can afford. The big thing that's happened is everyone moving around during the pandemic, trying to find a better place. They're like, oh, I don't have to live in downtown New York City. I can go to Charlotte and buy a house for $180,000 and have my well-paying job and work remotely or whatever. That's where I think a lot of the appreciation went to. Texas was really cheap. A lot of the South is cheap. Montana, some of the numbers in the first 6 months of the pandemic were insane of what they were growing, but the people are going there to remote work. They're not there to do Starbucks, to work at the places where they need help. So it's kind of turning into what Hawaii and Jackson Hole and some of these places are, where it's a lot of money, but they don't have the workers to do the things, and they don't have the services. It's kind of, there'll be another shakeout, but I just don't think we're not building enough to make up. We have something like 40 million more adults in America than we did in 2000. We did not build enough homes. And the reason it's become so obvious right now, I think, is because interest rates got so low and they were like, oh, I can do this. Unfortunately, the investors, the landlords are like, oh, now I can raise rates. So it's just all shifts at the same time. And I think it's just going to keep going for a while. It's just going to hit a limit, but it's still going to be multiple people trying to get into a home.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, upstate, there's just not a lot of area to build based on how towns are zoning and stuff. I would imagine that eventually they're going to have to look at their zoning in different towns and reconsider certain things. But right now there's just not. And even if, let's say, you do find the plot of land to build on, finding the person available to build and getting all of the resources right now with all of the delays, I mean, a new build is at least 2 years away in general in terms of like starting now, so I definitely think that that's going to be an ongoing challenge for sure. And it'll be interesting to see where the population settles. Like being here in New York City right now and going back and forth between upstate, like a lot of people are being asked to come back to the city for 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Right. So what does that mean? Are they going to move back into the city full time? The city is opening up. It's starting to feel a little bit more alive these days. but a lot of people got used to the fresh air and the trees upstate. Now a lot of people want the best of both worlds. That's me, one of them. You know what I mean? So like, how is that going to pan out? So it'll just be interesting to see how it all works itself out.
I listened to Pat Stone. He's with WFG Title. They've got several title companies with different names across the country. So I'm not sure what may be in your area, but he was talking about what will happen to big cities. And he said young people love to be in the city. That's where things are. They're not, it's the chances of the cities just deteriorating and people not coming back is just so small. It's really the people who were forced to be there are like, nope, I got my opportunity. I'm out of here. I'm tired of this rat race. I'm tired of this chaos, but there's people who love chaos.
Yeah.
and where things are happening is where people want to be. There will be a shift. There will be a change in demographics and whatever. And plus, the people who like luxury, where's luxury besides New York City?
Right.
So it's going to take a long time to settle out. Who knows what's going to happen with this Ukraine situation? If it's going to get worse, and that's all slowing things down. But I think cities will respond and get back to some sense of normalcy. It'll just look different. Everything's going to look different because we had people who are like, I'm not moving for 5 years. I got whatever pandemic hit. And they're like, why am I waiting to live my life? And they moved to Arizona, Vegas, wherever. Just kind of reset people's priorities. Now, I did hear a story about a guy who was in New York City. He's like, I'm buying a farm. 6 months later, he's going, I'm back to the city. This is stupid.
Yes.
So sometimes the move did not turn out the way they wanted.
Definitely. I do have a couple of people who are like, we're bored. We're coming back to Brooklyn. I'm like, all right. I think also the grass is always greener.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, no, has it been the same sort of mass moving over on the West Coast, like up in Oregon?
Yeah.
In California, and I feel like.
So I looked at 2 maps. They had these visualizations where everything was moving. It showed everyone moving out of California. Then they had another one showing where people were moving from Texas. They had Washington, and then they had Florida. The thing is everyone's moving. And someone called it the Great Reshuffling. I don't think that there was a huge net on everything. I think California did lose, but they're just so full. Their prices still went up. So they obviously did not lose that much.
Yeah.
And a lot of people try to make it political. See, they're leaving here and going here, but there's a lot of it crossing. Like Texas, what I heard was if you took away the votes of the people who'd been there less than 2 years, they would have flipped the state. So it's actually so what's happening is that a lot of it's a political move. I want to go where there's people more like me because this is crazy around me or whatever. And so that's a kind of interesting thing too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors. It's kind of fun to see. Prices are not dropping anywhere though.
Yeah.
So that doesn't show that anywhere's losing people apparently.
Right.
So if people do leave, then they just step out of renting to get a house.
Right. And then there's tons of people ready to rent after that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you put something up for rent and you've got a lot of people lining up outside.
So what I suggest to any buyer's agent out there is if you're working with a buyer is they're not just your client. They need to be willing to be your partner. And by that, I mean, this is a slog if you're a buyer right now.
Yeah.
And you can't just kind of sort of want it, So we're working in this together. I'm going to fight through hell to get you there. You have to come with me. You can't just give up on the first, flat tire.
Yeah.
And then really going through and saying the expectations of your buyer so that they're not giving up so easily and whatever. And my style is more like scare them with words because it's going to be harder once you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
If you can get a listing, that's gold right now. That's easy. It's not easy when you have to deal with 25 offers and figure everything out, but it's going to sell. When I was working through the Great Recession, our inventory was 20 months of inventory. And the buyers go, I don't know. I'll see what happens tomorrow.
Right.
And then the next
Oh
day,
my
there was
gosh, I
something
can't
new.
even imagine. That's like the complete opposite of what's going on right now.
Yep.
Oh, yep. So wild.
Sorry, we got technical
No worries.
difficulty.
No, so I just want to say thank you too for taking time today to chat, and also for definitely being one of the instructors in the program. Like, it definitely changed my life for sure, joining that program, and I really appreciate you and all of the other teachers too sharing their nuggets of wisdom.
My pleasure. It's a fun thing to do. Shelley put together something great, and I was just happy to be a part of it. Well,
Definitely.
if someone wants to work with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to reach out to me on Instagram. It's Mackenzie Trades NY. There's an S in there, NY, and that's because literally I do a lot of things. Or you can go to Mackenzie.trades.com. That's my blog. It's a little outdated, but I've got some posts coming out. It's just been a lot to juggle.
You've been busy. You've been busy.
Yeah, exactly. Because the blog posts are a little outdated, just know that that's because I've been out selling and working and renovating houses.
I'll give you a pro tip. When you get busy, just go change the dates.
Oh, good.
Nobody knows.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure we'll check in later and see how you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Bye.